The shotgun blast shattered the morning silence as Jasper Whitmore pulled the trigger at the circling vultures, his weathered hands trembling with rage rather than fear. His prize bull lay dead in the pasture, the third head of cattle he'd lost. This month to rustlers, and now even the scavengers mocked his misery. "Get away from him, you devils!" he roared, pumping another shell into the chamber. Behind him, the ancient bloodhound named Moses lifted his grizzled head from the porch of the dilapidated horse stable, ears pricked at his master's fury. The dog had been part of the inheritance from Jasper's uncle Cornelius Salong with the crumbling stable. 15 acres of drought-cursed land, and debts that would have made a banker weep. Jasper's boots crunched through the brittle grass as he stalked back toward the stable, his last sanctuary in a world determined to grind him into dust. At 32, he'd already buried a wife, lost to ranches to flood and fire, and now faced the final humiliation of bankruptcy. The bank notice crumpled in his shirt pocket felt like a death sentence. 30 days to pay $3,000 or lose everything. Moses followed with the careful gait of his 13 years, pausing occasionally to sniff at something only his ancient nose could detect. As they reached the stable's sagging entrance, the dog suddenly became agitated, whining and pawing at a loose floorboard near the back stall. "What's got into you, old boy?" Jasper muttered, kneeling beside the restless animal. The board lifted easily, revealing a cavity beneath. Moses thrust his muzzle into the space and emerged with something leather-bound clenched gently in his teeth, a journal, wrapped in oiled cloth and remarkably preserved despite its obvious age. Jasper's calloused fingers traced the faded gold. Lettering on the cover, "Property of Cornelius Whitmore, private accounts." His uncle had been an eccentric hermit, rumored to have struck it rich in the Colorado goldfields before settling into mysterious seclusion on this very land. The journal's yellowed pages crackled as Jasper opened it, and his eyes widened at the meticulous entries documenting locations, dates, and astronomical figures. His uncle hadn't just found gold, he'd discovered an entire network of hidden caches scattered across 3 counties. Mapped with the precision of a surveyor and the secrecy of a spy. "Sweet Jesus," Jasper whispered, his finger tracing a notation. That read, "Cache 7, Widow's Peak Mine, $47,000. In gold coin, marked by 3 lightning-split oaks." Moses wagged his tail as if understanding the magnitude of his discovery, while Jasper flipped through page after page of carefully documented treasure locations. The final entry, dated just weeks before his uncle's death, contained a startling revelation. The combined value of all caches exceeded $100 million in gold, silver, and precious stones. But as Jasper absorbed this life-changing information, he failed to notice the slender figure watching from the tree line, Evangeline Fairfax, the banker's daughter, whose morning rides had become less about exercise and more about catching glimpses of the ruggedly handsome rancher, whose pride refused to bend even as his world crumbled around him. Evangeline's heart hammered against her corset as she guided her mare closer to the stable, drawn by curiosity and something far more dangerous, the way Jasper Whitmore's shoulders set with determination even when defeat seemed certain. She'd been watching him for months. This proud man who'd never once begged for mercy despite the mounting foreclosure notices her father signed with increasing frequency. "Mr. Whitmore," she called softly, dismounting with practiced grace despite the impropriety of visiting an unmarried man alone. Jasper's head snapped up from the journal, and he quickly closed it, shoving the precious book inside his vest. Moses trotted over to greet the unexpected visitor, his tail wagging with the easy acceptance of a dog who'd grown fond of her secret visits. "Miss Fairfax." His voice carried the rough edge of a man unaccustomed to genteel company, especially not the banker's daughter whose father held his financial life in his manicured hands. This ain't no place for a lady. Evangeline's green eyes flashed with spirit. Perhaps not, but it's exactly where I choose to be. She stepped closer, noting the way his dark hair fell across his forehead and how his brown eyes held depths of pain he'd never voice. I heard the gunshots. Are you hurt? Nothing that won't heal, he replied gruffly, though the sight of her standing in his ramshackle stable made him painfully aware of his threadbare shirt and the dust coating his boots. She wore a riding habit of deep burgundy that complemented her auburn hair, and everything about her spoke of a world far removed from his daily struggle for survival. The rustlers again. Her knowledge of his troubles surprised him. About that, Father discusses his business concerns at dinner. She moved closer, and he caught the scent of lavender and something uniquely her. Jasper, there might be another way. The use of his given name sent an unexpected jolt through him. Your father made his terms clear, miss. 30 days, and I ain't got $3,000 hidden under my mattress. Evangeline's breath caught as she noticed the leather binding protruding from his vest. What's that you're hiding? Jasper's hand instinctively covered the journal. Nothing that concerns you. But Moses, with the perfect timing of a dog who understood more than he let on, nudged against Jasper's leg, causing the journal to slip. Evangeline's quick reflexes caught it before it hit the ground, and their hands touched as she handed it. A moment of contact that sent electricity through both of them. Uncle Cornelius's journal, Jasper admitted reluctantly. Just old stories and ramblings. Evangeline studied his face, recognizing the look of a man who just discovered hope but feared to trust it. Stories can be powerful things, Mr. Whitmore. Sometimes they hold more truth than we dare believe. Before he could respond, the thunder of approaching hooves interrupted them. Through the stable's open door, they saw Bartholomew Creed, the territory's most ruthless land speculator, dismounting from a coal-black stallion with 3 armed men flanking him. Well, well. Creed's voice carried the smooth menace of a snake oil salesman, if it isn't the famous Jasper Whitmore, still playing at being a rancher. His cold eyes shifted to Evangeline, the lovely Miss Fairfax. How, convenient to find you both here. Jasper stepped protectively in front of Evangeline, his hand moving instinctively to the Colt revolver at his hip. State your business. Creed, then get off my land. Creed's smile revealed teeth like yellowed ivory. Your land? For how much longer? He pulled a folded document from his coat. I've made your father-in-law a very generous offer for your debt, Miss Fairfax. Seems I'll be your new landlord come month's end. The color drained from Evangeline's face as she realized the implications not just for Jasper's future, but for any chance of happiness they might have found together. Evangeline's mind raced as Creed's words sank in. Her father had mentioned selling some troubled accounts, but she'd never imagined he'd hand Jasper's fate over to the most despicable man in 3 territories. Creed's reputation for driving families from their land through intimidation and violence was legendary, and his interest in this particular property seemed suspiciously intense. The debt belongs to Fairfax Bank until the deadline passes, she said firmly, stepping beside Jasper despite his protective stance. Father hasn't signed any papers yet. Creed's laugh held no warmth. Business is business, darling. Your sentimental father lacks the stomach for necessary measures. His pale eyes fixed on Jasper. But I've heard interesting rumors about old Cornelius Whitmore. Folks say he might have left more than just worthless land behind. Jasper's grip tightened on the journal hidden beneath his vest. The only thing my uncle left was debt and heartache. Perhaps, but I'm a thorough man, Whitmore. I'll be conducting my own ... investigation of this property very soon. Creed remounted his stallion. Enjoy your remaining days of ownership, all of you. As the riders disappeared in a cloud of dust, Evangeline turned to Jasper with fierce determination. He knows something. What was in that journal? Jasper looked into her eyes and saw not the pampered banker's daughter he'd expected, but a woman of steel wrapped in silk. The morning sun caught the fire in her auburn hair, and he realized that somewhere between her first secret visit and this moment, she'd become essential to his very breathing. Gold, he said simply. More gold than a man could spend in 10 lifetimes. If the entries are true, her eyes widened. Show me. They retreated deeper into the stable's shadows, Moses standing guard at the entrance with surprising alertness for his age. Jasper opened the journal, revealing his uncle's meticulous maps and calculations. Evangeline leaned close to study the pages, and he found himself distracted by the curve of her neck and the way she bit her lower lip in concentration. Cache 7, she read aloud. Widow's Peak Mine. I know that place sits about 20 miles north, near the old mining camp. She looked up at him, her face flushed with excitement. We could be there and back before nightfall. We. Jasper shook his head. This is dangerous business, Miss Fairfax. If Creed suspects what's in this journal, then we need to move faster than he does. She stood, brushing dust from her riding skirt. I know these mountains better than any banker's daughter should, thanks to years of escaping my governess. And you need someone who can help you navigate my father's banking procedures. Jasper studied her face, seeing the steel beneath the beauty. Why would you risk this? Your reputation, your safety, everything. Evangeline stepped closer, close enough that he could see the green flecks in her eyes. Because I've been watching you for months, Jasper Whitmore. Watching you fight when other men would have surrendered. Watching you maintain your honor when it would have been easier to beg. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And because I've fallen in love with a man too? Proud to see what's right in front of him. Before he could respond, she'd moved away to examine the journal's map more closely. We'll need supplies, rope, lanterns, tools for digging. And we'll need to move carefully. If this Cache 7 exists, it could solve all your problems. Our problems, he corrected quietly, and she rewarded him with a smile that made his heart race faster than any cattle stampede. Moses barked once, a warning that riders were approaching again. This time, it was Evangeline's personal groom, looking frantic. Miss Evangeline, your father's looking for you. Says there's been some trouble at the bank, and Mr. Creed's been asking questions about the Whitmore account. She swung onto her mare, with fluid grace. Tell father I'm visiting the Miller family about their daughter's wedding arrangements. I'll be back by evening. As she prepared to ride away, she looked back at Jasper. Meet me at dawn tomorrow, at Devil's Crossing. Bring your uncle's journal and anything else you think we might need. Her eyes held a promise that made his blood run hot. We're going treasure hunting, Mr. Whitmore. The pre-dawn mist clung to Devil's Crossing like the whispered secrets of lovers, and Jasper arrived to find Evangeline already waiting, her silhouette elegant even in practical riding clothes. She'd exchanged her fine dress for split skirts and a leather jacket that belonged to some lucky man. Jasper found himself wanting to challenge to a duel. You came, she said softly, and the relief in her voice told him she'd feared he might reconsider. During the long night. Couldn't stay away, he admitted, dismounting with the saddlebags containing rope, tools, and his uncle's journal. Moses jumped down from behind the saddle, his old bones creaking, but his spirit eager for adventure. Evangeline had brought a pack horse, loaded with supplies that must have cost more than most folks. Cayuse saw in a year further proof of her commitment to this dangerous venture. But it was the small derringer tucked into her boot that told Jasper she understood the stakes they were playing for. Your father discover you missing yet? He thinks I'm visiting my aunt in Carson City for the week. She guided her mare alongside. his gelding as they started north toward the mountains. It seemed prudent to arrange for some ... privacy while we conduct our business. The trail wound upward through pine forests still heavy with morning dew. And Jasper found himself stealing glances at his unlikely partner. Evangeline rode like she'd been born to the saddle, handling her spirited mare with casual expertise that spoke of countless hours spent escaping the confines of proper society. "Tell me about your uncle," she said, as they paused to water the horses at a mountain stream. Jasper loosened his gelding's girth, memories flowing like the cold water over rocks. Cornelius was ... different. Came back from Colorado Territory changed. Wouldn't talk about what he'd seen or done out there. Spent his last 20 years like a hermit, mapping every cave and canyon for miles around. He looked up at Evangeline, noting how the morning light caught the copper highlights in her hair. Folks thought he was crazy. Maybe he was crazy like a fox. She knelt beside the stream, cupping the clear water to drink, and Jasper was struck by her natural grace, even in such a simple gesture. "Did you know him well?" "Well enough to know he never did anything without a reason." Jasper pulled out the journal, studying the hand-drawn map of their destination. "If he says there's gold at Widow's Peak, then by God, there's gold there." They remounted and continued climbing, the trail growing narrower and more treacherous with each mile. Evangeline never complained, never showed fear, even when loose shale sent her mare sliding dangerously close to a cliff edge. Watching her, Jasper felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that this woman was unlike any he'd ever known. There, Evangeline pointed ahead to where 3 ancient oaks stood sentinel on a rocky outcrop. A cue, their trunks scarred by lightning strikes, just like your uncle described. The Widow's Peak mine entrance gaped like a hungry mouth in the mountainside, timber supports gray with age and neglect. According to Cornelius's journal, Cache 7 lay 50 paces inside the main tunnel, hidden beneath a pile of seemingly worthless slag. "Stay close," Jasper warned as they lit their lanterns and entered the mine. The air smelled of damp earth and old dreams, and their footsteps echoed in the darkness like gunshots. Moses sniffed eagerly at the tunnel walls, his keen nose detecting scents that might have lingered for decades. At exactly 50 paces, he began pawing at a mound of broken rock that looked identical to a dozen others they'd passed. "Good boy," Jasper breathed, setting down his lantern and reaching for a shovel. But as he began to dig, the sound of approaching horses echoed from the mine entrance. Evangeline's hand found his arm, her fingers strong and sure. "Creed," she whispered, "he must have followed us." Jasper's mind raced through their options, all of them bad. They were trapped in a dead-end tunnel with no way out except through whatever force Creed had brought with him. Well, came Creed's voice from the entrance, distorted by the tunnel's acoustics, but unmistakably menacing. "What have we here?" "A secret rendezvous between the banker's daughter and the broken rancher. How ... touching." Evangeline stepped forward, placing herself between Jasper and the approaching threat. "Whatever you think you know, Creed, you're wrong." "Oh, I don't think so, my dear." Creed's laugh echoed off the stone walls. "I think I know exactly what brought you both to this particular hole in the ground." The lantern light danced wickedly across Creed's face as he emerged from the tunnel's darkness, flanked by the same 3 gunmen from the previous day. His pale eyes gleamed with avarice as they swept over the disturbed slag heap where Jasper had been digging. "Drop the shovel, Whitmore," Creed commanded, his hand resting casually on the ivory handle of his Colt, "and step away from whatever you've found." Jasper's muscles coiled like a spring, but Evangeline's subtle touch on his arm warned him against reckless action. They were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped in a stone tomb with no escape route. "There's nothing here but old rocks and fool's dreams," Jasper said evenly, though his heart pounded against his ribs. Perhaps. But I've made it my business to learn everything about Cornelius Whitmore's final years. Creed stepped closer, his boots crunching on loose gravel. Did you know your uncle made several trips to Denver before he died? Large deposits at 3 different banks, always in gold coin. Always with the careful precision of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Evangeline felt the blood drain from her face. If Creed had tracked her father's business correspondence, he might know far more than they'd suspected. Your uncle was no hermit, Whitmore. He was a man protecting the greatest secret in Colorado. Territory. Creed's smile was cold as winter wind. And now that secret belongs to me. Moses, who'd been sitting quietly near the disturbed slag, suddenly erupted into the most vicious barking of his 13 years. The old dog lunged forward, sinking his teeth into the nearest gunman's leg with surprising ferocity. Moses, no. Jasper shouted. The distraction was all Evangeline needed. Her derringer appeared in her hand with shocking speed. The small barrel aimed directly at Creed's heart. I suggest you reconsider your position, Mr. Creed. The mine tunnel fell silent, except for the wounded gunman's cursing and Moses's continued growling. Creed stared at the banker's daughter with new respect and considerable wariness. Well trained. Darling, but that little popgun won't stop all of us. Perhaps not, but it will certainly stop you. Evangeline replied with ice-cold calm, and dead men don't spend gold. Jasper used the standoff to edge toward his rifle, leaning against the tunnel wall. The metallic click of him cocking the weapon echoed ominously in the confined space. Now the odds look a bit different, Jasper said quietly. Moses, come here, boy. The bloodhound released his grip and trotted back to his master's side tail, wagging proudly at his contribution to the fight. The wounded gunman clutched his bleeding leg and glared hatred at the dog. You're making a serious mistake, Creed warned. I have men positioned outside. Even if you kill us all, you'll never leave this mountain alive. Maybe, Evangeline conceded, but dying free sounds better than living under your boot. For a long moment, the tableau held 2 sides balanced on the razor's edge of violence, with fortunes and lives hanging in the balance. Then Jasper made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. There's another way, he said slowly. Creed, you want gold? There's enough in these mountains to make us all rich beyond imagination. But it'll take cooperation, not bullets, to claim it safely. Creed's eyebrows rose. A partnership. Civilized, temporary alliance, Jasper corrected. We share the risk, we share the reward. But Evangeline and I control the journal, and we take the largest share. And why would I agree to such generous terms? Evangeline smiled, and there was something dangerous in the expression. Because my father's bank handles the assay and transport for every major mining operation in 3 territories. Without his cooperation, your gold is just pretty rocks. She was bluffing. Her father would never knowingly help Bartholomew Creed. With anything but the lie was delivered with such confidence that even Jasper almost believed it. Creed considered this, his calculating mind weighing options and risks. Finally, he holstered his weapon with deliberate slowness. Very well, temporary partners it is. His smile promised future betrayal. But I'll be watching both of you very carefully. As the immediate tension eased, Jasper returned to his digging. With renewed urgency, whatever lay beneath the slag heap, they needed to find it quickly before Creed decided. Partnership was less profitable than murder. Moses wagged his tail and resumed his helpful sniffing, leading them to a specific spot, where his nose detected something extraordinary. When Jasper's shovel finally struck something solid, the metallic ring that echoed through the tunnel made every heart skip a beat. Well, I'll be damned, breathed one of Creed's men, as the lantern light revealed the corner of an iron chest. Its surface green with age, but still intact. The iron chest emerged from its earthen tomb like a sleeping giant awakening after decades of slumber. Jasper's hands trembled as he brushed away the last of the dirt, revealing intricate metalwork and a lock that had withstood time's assault. Cornelius Whitmore had chosen his hiding place while the chest was perfectly preserved in the mines. "Dry air. Open it," Creed commanded, his patience wearing thin despite their temporary alliance. Not so fast. Evangeline kept her derringer trained on the group while Jasper consulted his uncle's journal. "There might be traps or mechanisms we need to understand first." The journal's margins contained detailed sketches of the chest's construction, including notes about a combination lock hidden beneath what appeared to be decorative scrollwork. Jasper's fingers found the mechanism, and following his uncle's careful instructions, he pressed a sequence of seemingly random bumps and ridges. The lock clicked open with surprising ease. "Sweet Mary and Joseph," whispered one of Creed's men, as the chest lid lifted, revealing stacks of gold coins that caught their lantern light like captured sunfire. But this was no random treasure. Each stack was wrapped in oiled cloth with meticulous documentation of weight, purity, and origin. Evangeline picked up one of the smaller parcels, her breath catching as she read the notation. "Colorado Territory. 1862 to 4.2 ounces to 92% pure value. $67.20. The chest contained 43 such parcels, representing a fortune that would have taken most men a lifetime to accumulate. "This is just the beginning," Jasper said quietly, studying his uncle's journal. Cache 7 was listed as containing $47,000, but this chest holds barely $3,000. There must be more. Moses, apparently deciding that their treasure hunting required his expertise, began sniffing around the tunnel with renewed intensity. His ancient nose led him to a section of wall that looked identical to every other section, but something about it captured his attention completely. "What's he found now?" Creed demanded, following the dog's progress. Moses pawed at what appeared to be solid rock, whining with frustration. But when Jasper held his lantern closer, he noticed that the stone was actually carefully applied mortar designed to blend with the natural tunnel wall. "Uncle Cornelius was thorough," Jasper muttered, pulling out his pickaxe. The false wall crumbled under determined assault, revealing a carefully excavated cavity containing 6 more iron chests, each one larger than the first dot. The sight of such wealth stunned even Creed into momentary silence. 7 chests of gold represented more money than any of them had dreamed, possibly enough to buy entire towns, enough to transform lives and destinies. "We'll need pack animals to move all this," Evangeline observed practically, though her eyes shone with the same avarice that gripped them all. "And we'll need to be careful. This much gold will attract attention from here to San Francisco." But as they began examining the remaining chests, Moses suddenly stiffened, his ears pricked toward the mine entrance. A low growl rumbled in his throat, the warning of a dog who'd spent years protecting his territory from unwelcome visitors. "Someone's coming," Jasper hissed, extinguishing his lantern. The others followed suit, plunging the tunnel into absolute darkness. The sound of approaching boots echoed from the entrance, accompanied by voices Jasper didn't recognize. But Creed's sharp intake of breath suggested he knew exactly who was coming. "McCready," Creed whispered, his voice tight with fear. "My former partner. The bastard must have followed my men." Former partner, Evangeline's voice carried deadly calm. "You didn't mention any partners in our arrangement." "Business relationship ended badly," Creed admitted. "He'll kill us all rather than share." The approaching voices grew clearer, revealing at least 6 men moving with military precision. McCready's operation was larger and better organized than anything they'd prepared for. "Back tunnel," Jasper whispered urgently, consulting his uncle's journal by feel in the darkness. Cornelius mapped an old ventilation shaft that connects to the surface. "It'll be tight, but we might be able to escape with some of the gold." "We can't leave it all," Creed protested. "Better to leave the gold than leave our lives," Evangeline replied sharply. "Moses, quiet boy, lead us out." The old bloodhound proved his worth once again, navigating the pitch-black tunnel with supernatural confidence. His nose guided them, past side passages and dangerous drop-offs toward salvation, and toward a confrontation that would test every ounce of courage they possessed. Behind them, lantern light began flickering as McCready's men entered the main tunnel, and their excited shouts indicated they'd discovered the treasure cache. The hunt was about to become deadly earnest. The ventilation shaft proved barely wide enough for a man's shoulders, forcing them to crawl single file through centuries of accumulated dust and spiderwebs. Moses led the way with surprising agility for his age, his keen nose following air currents that promised escape. Behind them, McCready's angry shouts echoed through the main tunnel as he discovered their abandoned treasure. "They took some of it." McCready's voice carried murderous rage. "Find them. Nobody robs Silas McCready and lives to spend the gold." Evangeline crawled directly behind Moses, her practical clothes serving her well in the cramped passage. Jasper followed close behind, clutching a saddlebag containing 2 of the smaller treasure parcels and his uncle's invaluable journal. Creed and his remaining men brought up the rear, their earlier bravado replaced by desperate fear of their former associates' vengeance. "How much farther?" Creed gasped, his expensive suit torn and filthy from the rough passage. "According to the journal, about 200 yards to a natural cave opening," Jasper replied, consulting his uncle's careful measurements. "But it connects to a whole network of passages that Cornelius mapped over 20 years. The shaft began to widen, allowing them to move faster, but also creating new dangers. Side passages branched off into darkness, any one of which could lead to a dead end or a fatal fall. Moses never hesitated, following scents and air currents with the confidence of a tracker born to the wilderness. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew closer. McCready had brought rope and climbing equipment, giving his men advantages in navigating the tight spaces. Worse, their lanterns cast dancing shadows that revealed they were gaining ground rapidly. There, Evangeline pointed ahead to where natural light filtered through a crack in the rock. The cave opening. They emerged into a limestone cavern that stretched beyond their vision, its walls decorated with formations that looked like frozen waterfalls. But beauty was a luxury they couldn't afford. McCready's men were less than 50 yards behind them. "This way," Moses barked once, then trotted toward what appeared to be solid wall. But as they approached, they saw it was actually a narrow passage concealed by the cavern's natural shadows. The passage opened onto a ledge, overlooking a valley they'd never seen before, hidden deep in the mountain's heart. A crystal stream meandered through the valley floor, and ancient pine trees created a cathedral of green shadow. It was beautiful, isolated, and completely invisible from any established trail. Secret Valley, Jasper breathed. Uncle Cornelius found his own private kingdom. But their wonder was interrupted by the emergence of McCready's men from the cave behind them. The ledge was narrow, with no cover and nowhere to run except down a treacherous slope that would leave them exposed to rifle fire. "End of the trail, folks," McCready called out, his voice echoing off the valley walls. He was a tall man with silver hair and eyes like blue ice, dressed in the fine clothes of a successful businessman who'd chosen violence as his preferred negotiation method. "Silas," Creed tried desperately, "we can work something out. There's enough gold for everyone. The time for partnership ended when you tried to cut me out of the biggest strike in Colorado territory." "Ah," McCready replied coldly. "Now you're going to tell me where the rest of Cornelius Whitmore's treasure is hidden, or I'm going to start shooting pieces off your friends here." Evangeline stepped forward with a fearless grace that had first captured Jasper's heart. "You're making a mistake, Mr. McCready. My father is president of Fairfax Bank, and when I don't return from my trip, he'll send federal marshals to investigate." McCready's laugh was genuinely amused. "Your father thinks you're visiting your aunt in Carson City, remember? And tragic accidents happen to young ladies who venture into dangerous mountain country alone." The situation seemed hopeless until Moses, apparently deciding the conversation had gone on long enough, trotted to the edge of the ledge and barked 3 times. The sound echoed strangely in the hidden valley, and moments later an answering call came from the forest below. "What in hell?" McCready began, but his words were cut off by the crack of a rifle from the valley floor. "Federal Marshal," a voice boomed from the trees. "Drop your weapons and surrender." The ledge erupted into chaos as McCready's men scrambled for cover behind the limited rock formations. But their position was hopeless, caught on an exposed ledge with lawmen below and nowhere to retreat. "How did they find us?" Creed demanded, pressing himself against the cliff face. Jasper looked at Moses, whose tail was wagging with obvious satisfaction, and understanding dawned. "You clever old boy. You've been here before, haven't you? Uncle Cornelius arranged some kind of signal system." The bloodhound's 3 barks had been no accident. They were a code, recognized by someone who'd been waiting in the hidden valley for decades. Someone who'd been protecting Cornelius Whitmore's secrets long after the old man's death. "This is your last warning," the marshal called. "Surrender now or face the consequences." McCready's face twisted with rage as he realized his carefully planned robbery had become a trap. But desperate men make dangerous choices. And Silas McCready had built his reputation on never surrendering anything without a fight. The marshal's challenge hung in the mountain air like a death sentence, but Silas McCready had not built his criminal empire by surrendering to superior odds. His eyes, cold as winter steel, calculated angles and options with the precision of a man who'd survived 20 years of frontier violence. "Federal Marshal, my ass," he snarled to his men. Probably just some old prospector Whitmore left to guard his treasure. He raised his voice toward the valley floor. "Show yourself, lawman. Let's see your badge and warrant." The response came not in words, but in action. A rifle bullet struck the rock inches from McCready's head, showering him with granite chips and making his intentions clear. This was no bluffing prospector. This was someone who knew how to use a weapon with deadly accuracy. "That was your warning shot," came the voice from below. "The next one won't miss." Jasper studied the valley through the scope of possibilities, trying to understand the tactical situation. No, the hidden valley was a perfect natural fortress, with steep walls that would make escape nearly impossible for anyone unfamiliar with its secrets. But it was also a trap for anyone caught in its depths, including themselves. "Moses," he whispered to the bloodhound, "can you get us down there safely?" The old dog's response was immediate and confident. He trotted to what appeared to be empty air at the ledge's edge, then looked back expectantly. When Jasper followed, he discovered a narrow trail carved into the cliff face, invisible from above, but wide enough for single-file passage. "There's a path," he told Evangeline quietly. Cornelius must have spent years creating escape routes, but McCready had reached the same conclusion through different reasoning. If the old hermit had built one secret trail, there might be others. His pale eyes swept the cliff face with renewed interest, searching for any irregularity that might indicate human construction. "Briggs, Patterson," he commanded 2 of his men, "work your way around the valley rim. Find another way down. Johnson, keep that marshal pinned with covering fire." The valley erupted into a deadly game of cat and mouse as bullets began flying in both directions. The marshal, whoever he was, had taken cover behind the massive pine trees. using their ancient trunks as natural fortifications. His return. Fire was methodical and accurate, forcing McCready's men to stay low behind inadequate rock cover. "We need to move," Evangeline urged, her derringer ready but woefully inadequate against McCready's rifles. "This ledge will become our tomb if we stay here." Jasper nodded, shouldering the precious saddlebag containing their share of the treasure. "Moses, lead us down, boy. Slow and careful." The bloodhound began his descent with the sure-footed confidence of a mountain goat, each step placed with deliberate precision on the narrow trail. Evangeline followed without hesitation, her trust in both the dog and the man behind her absolute despite the bullets whistling overhead. Creed hesitated, torn between fear of the treacherous path and terror of McCready's vengeance. What if it's a trap? What if the marshal is working with McCready? Then we're dead either way, Jasper replied grimly. But Moses trusts whoever's down there, and that old dog has better judgment than most people I know. The descent took 15 agonizing minutes, with each step bringing them closer to either salvation or slaughter. The sounds of battle continued above them. McCready's men had found at least one other route down and were advancing through the forest, while the mysterious marshal continued his tactical retreat toward the valley's far end. When they finally reached the valley floor, Moses immediately began trotting toward a grove of ancient oaks where smoke from a carefully concealed campfire drifted lazily upward, hidden among the massive tree trunks. They found a sight that stopped them all in their tracks. An elderly man with a magnificent white beard sat calmly beside the fire, cleaning a rifle with the practiced movements of someone who'd done it thousands of times. He wore the simple clothes of a mountain man, but his eyes held the intelligence of someone who'd seen much of the world and understood its complexities. "About time you folks showed up," he said, without looking up from his weapon. "Cornelius told me his nephew might come calling someday, but I figured you'd have better sense than to bring half the territory's outlaws with you." "You knew my uncle?" Jasper asked, studying the stranger's weathered face. "Knew him? Son, I was his partner for 30 years. Name's Obadiah Flint, and I've been waiting in this valley since the day Cornelius died, guarding his secrets and watching for his rightful heir." He looked up then, and Jasper saw eyes as sharp as a hawk's despite their owner's advanced age. "Though I didn't expect the heir to arrive with such charming company." Evangeline felt herself blush under the old man's knowing gaze. "Mr. Flint, we're in considerable danger. There are at least 6 armed men pursuing us." "5 now," Obadiah corrected calmly, nodding toward the sounds of battle echoing from the valley's eastern slope. "That fellow McCready brought city boys to a mountain fight. They're learning the difference the hard way." Indeed, the gunfire had become more sporadic, suggesting that the marshal, who was apparently Obadiah himself, acting alone, had been systematically reducing the odds. Mountain warfare was a different game than the street violence McCready's men were accustomed to. "The treasure," Jasper began, but Obadiah held up a weathered hand. "All in good time, nephew. First, let's finish dealing with your uninvited guests." He stood with surprising spryness for his age, shouldering his rifle. "Then we'll discuss your uncle's legacy and what it means for your future." The old mountain man's confidence was infectious, but Jasper couldn't shake the feeling that they were far from safe. McCready was wounded and desperate, making him more dangerous than ever. And somewhere in the hidden valley shadows, the final confrontation was building toward a climax that would determine not just their survival, but their entire future together. Moses settled beside the campfire with a contented sigh, apparently satisfied that his humans were finally in capable hands. But even the old bloodhound kept his ears pricked toward the sounds of approaching danger, ready to defend his pack one more time. The morning sun painted the hidden valley in shades of gold and green as Obadiah Flint led them deeper into Cornelius Whitmore's secret kingdom. What they discovered there defied every expectation and explained 30 years of mysterious behavior from the hermit of Willow Creek, hidden beneath a natural rock overhang. Carefully concealed from casual observation lay the entrance to what could only be described as an underground palace. Cornelius had spent decades excavating and improving a natural cave system, creating a series of chambers that served as both fortress and treasure vault. "Your uncle was many things," Obadiah explained as he lit oil lamps that illuminated carved walls and carefully constructed storage areas. But he was never crazy. Every year of seeming madness was actually careful preparation for the day when his heir would need this sanctuary. But it was the adjoining chamber that left them all speechless. Row upon row of carefully labeled containers held not just gold and silver, but precious stones, rare metals, and currency from banks across the American West. The total value was staggering easily the $100 million mentioned in Cornelius's journal, possibly more. "How?" Evangeline whispered, overwhelmed by the scope of what they'd discovered. "Your uncle had a gift for finding things others missed," Obadiah replied. "And he had 30 years to perfect his craft. Every abandoned mine, every failed claim, every treasure that desperate men buried and died before retrieving Cornelius found them all." Creed stared at the wealth surrounding them with naked avarice. "We could buy entire states with this fortune. We?" came a cold voice from the chamber's entrance. They spun to find Macready silhouetted against the morning light. His fine clothes torn and bloodied, but his resolve unbroken. He held a rifle trained on the group, and his remaining men flanked him. With weapons ready, touching reunion, Macready continued, stepping into the chamber. "But this is where your treasure hunt ends. All of it, every coin, every nugget, every precious stone belongs to me now." "Like hell it does," Jasper replied, his hand moving toward his Colt. "I wouldn't," Macready warned. "My men have clear shots at your lady friend there. One wrong. Move, and she dies first, slow and painful." But Macready had made a crucial error in his calculations. He'd underestimated both the resourcefulness of mountain men and the loyalty of old dogs. Moses, who'd been resting quietly near the chamber's rear exit, suddenly erupted into the most vicious snarling of his long life. The bloodhound's attack wasn't directed at Macready's men, it was aimed at a pile of seemingly innocent mining equipment that concealed the chamber's emergency exit. As the dog's claws and teeth tore away the camouflage, a new voice joined the confrontation. Federal Marshal Jeremiah Stone came the authoritative call from the newly revealed passage. "Drop your weapons and surrender." This time it was the real thing, a genuine federal marshal with a star on his vest and the authority of the United States government behind his commands. Macready's face went white as he realized his careful plans had led him into a trap that had been decades in the making. Cornelius arranged for federal protection of his treasure years ago, Obadiah explained calmly. "Legal documentation, proper claims, everything filed with the territorial government. This treasure belongs to Jasper Whitmore by legitimate inheritance, not by right of robbery." The standoff lasted only moments before Macready's remaining men, faced with federal charges and certain prison terms, began laying down their weapons. Even desperate criminals knew better than to fire on federal marshals. That was a hanging offense with no possibility of escape. Macready himself held out until the bitter end, his rifle wavering between targets as his criminal empire crumbled around him. But when Marshal Stone's deputy appeared from yet another hidden passage, flanking him completely, even Silas Macready's legendary stubbornness couldn't deny reality. "This isn't over," he snarled as the marshal's shackles clicked around his wrists. "Yes, it is," Evangeline replied with quiet finality. "It's over, and justice has won." As the marshals led the prisoners away through passages that would eventually connect to established trails, Jasper found himself alone with Evangeline in a treasure chamber worth more than most nations' annual budgets. The magnitude of their situation was overwhelming. They were, by any measure, among the wealthiest people in North America. "So what happens now?" Evangeline asked softly, moving close enough that he could smell the lavender in her hair, despite their underground adventure. "Now we go home," Jasper replied, taking her hands in his calloused ones. "We pay off the bank debt, buy back the ranch, and start building the life we both want." "And what kind of life is that?" He looked into her green eyes and saw his entire future reflected there. "The kind where a broken rancher gets to marry the banker's daughter. Where we raise horses and children and grow old together, watching sunsets over our own land." She smiled then, the radiant expression that had first stolen his heart months ago. "That sounds perfect. But I have one condition. Anything. We keep Moses. That dog has earned his place in our family." As if summoned by his name, the old bloodhound appeared at their feet, his tail wagging with the satisfaction of a job well done. He'd led them to treasure beyond imagination, helped them survive deadly enemies, and brought two hearts together. In the process, 3 months later, Jasper and Evangeline Whitmore stood on the porch of their restored ranch house, watching their prize cattle graze in pastures green with spring grass. The banker's daughter had become a rancher's wife with the same grace she'd brought to treasure hunting. And the broken man had discovered that true wealth wasn't measured in gold coins, but in the love of a good woman and the promise of children yet to come. Moses dozed contentedly in the afternoon sun, occasionally lifting his grizzled head to survey his domain. He'd lived to see his humans find happiness, and for an old dog who'd spent his life protecting what mattered most, that was the greatest treasure of all. The secret of Cornelius Whitmore's hidden fortune was safe, known only to those who'd earned the right to guard it. And in the hidden valley deep in the Colorado mountains, Obadiah Flint continued his patient vigil, ensuring that some treasures remained beyond the reach of those who would steal rather than earn their fortunes. The wild love story of the broken rancher and the banker's daughter had become legend in 3 Count Caesar. Reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in the ground, but in the courage to love someone completely, regardless of the obstacles that stand in the way.